Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Matt Taibbi, one of the journalists who's been publishing the Twitter file information over the last several months, and who appeared before that House committee last week, along with Michael Schellenberger and others, FBI whistleblowers like Steve Friend. Matt Taibbi offers a pretty good post-mortem on the experience and where the Democrats are right now when it comes to, well, free expression, first and foremost. He writes that he and Schellenberger repeatedly quizzed about money we have made during the Twitter files period, which we played for you, the exchanges between him and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Texas Congressman Colin Allred told me to take off my tinfoil hat, and that the 3 FBI agents were accused of conspiratorial social media posts. Allred, the same congressman, blasted me for criticizing the national security agencies. Grapple with the reality, he said, that the very rights you think they're trying to undermine, they may be trying to protect. They were accused of being stooges for Elon Musk. Friend and the FBI agents were agents of Kash Patel, Trump administration intel official. But Taibbi points out the most outrageous portion of the Democrat Party's report came in a section claiming that because the agents were not really whistleblowers, which is arguable, and therefore really just expressing their opinion, they're not covered by any law. No law protects witnesses who speak to Congress under these circumstances, wrote the Democrats on the committee. Well, as Taibbi points out, actually, the Whistleblower Protection Act specifically protects witnesses, and the First Amendment generally does, but not to the Democrats on this committee. He concludes the style of the new anti-speech Democrat is clear. Define all government critics as lacking standing to criticize. Impugn their prior opinions and associations, imply that all their beliefs are conspiracy theories, define their lack of faith in the FBI's judgment as treasonous, and declare their motivation to be financial. Lastly, when they invoke common constitutional rights, make a note that their activities exist in an uncovered carve-out. This is the playbook, and we all better get used to it. Well, we either better get used to it or we better call it out like Taibbi is and push back hard against it. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Professor Alan Dershowitz, Emeritus Professor of Law at Harvard. His podcast, The Dersh Show, can be found on Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. His latest book, Get Trump, The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law, is available now, as is his last book, which was released earlier this year, Guilt by Accusation, The Challenge of Proving Innocence in the Age of #MeToo. Professor Dershowitz, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
It was really a scene last week at the hearing and watching the treatment by Democrats, Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, who both identify as men of the center-left.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have the same problem. I'm a person
of
the center-left. I'm a liberal. I voted Democrat all my life. And they're trying to shut me down, too. The Democrats and the left have lost credibility on issues like freedom of speech and the First Amendment. It's free speech for me, but not for thee. Some of the most repressive comments have come from people on the hard left, the woke culture. We saw what happened at Stanford University the other day when people from the left, the National Lawyers Guild, set out to deliberately prevent the federal judge from speaking, and then the dean of diversity at the law school basically agreed that a person like that judge shouldn't have the right to speak because he may upset some people. And, the First Amendment is just out the window. The American Civil Liberties Union has forgotten about the First Amendment. All it cares about now is defending woke culture. And, I grew up during McCarthyism. I remember how dangerous it is when the government tries to suppress free speech. And it's so important to have an aggressive an approach to fighting back, because without free speech, democracy can't survive. We have to have the information to tell our elected members how to vote and who to vote for. They're our representatives.
Well, when is enough and you might leave the Democratic Party?
Well, it depends on who's on the Republican Party. For me, it's always a choice, often a choice of evils, unfortunately. I remember when I was representing President Trump, he would ask me all the time, why aren't you voting for me? Why aren't you voting for Republicans? And I say, look, there are many issues involved. There's a woman's right to choose. There's gay rights. There's the climate. There's so many issues that, we make decisions based on all the issues. On the issue of civil liberties, I am no longer supportive of the Democratic Party. I think they have neglected civil liberties. And if the right Republican were to be nominated and the wrong Democrat were to be nominated, hey, it'd be easy for me to make that switch. I've never voted for a Republican presidential candidate before, but I easily could see it. I made one serious mistake. I voted for Barack Obama the second time. I should have voted for Romney. That was a big mistake. I wish I had voted for Romney. The second term of the Obama administration was an absolute disaster.
Well, speaking of Trump and civil liberties, that's your latest book, Get Trump, The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law, and a case that is moving along to some conclusion. We're not sure what conclusion yet, but is in Manhattan, where the DA there, Alvin Bragg, is trying to put together a case to charge Trump with felonies for improper business record keeping and campaign finance violation?
It's a phony thing. I don't want to ever make comparisons to the Soviet Union, but it does remind me of the time that Lavrentiy Beria, the head of the KGB, said, Stalin, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. And, J. Edgar Hoover used to do that. You target people. What happened with both Bragg and the Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, they campaigned on the issue of getting Trump. We'll get Trump. Elect us and we'll get Trump. And then they spent months looking for statutes, looking for something that they can get him on, and they came up with this Mickey Mouse stuff about if he paid hush money, and if he did, that's perfectly legal. And, did he pay back Cohen, who paid the hush money, and does that constitute a campaign contribution? It's so phony. Does anybody believe that Bragg or James would ever go after a different person other than Trump? The Bible has an interesting instruction to judges. It says there are two things judges can't do. One, take bribes. That's obvious. The other one is do not recognize faces. Lo takir panim in the original biblical Hebrew. Don't recognize faces. Don't ever do justice based on who the person is, not what it is they've done. And nobody would dream of going after anybody on this Mickey Mouse campaign contribution thing unless they were out to get Trump. Look, I'm not a Trump supporter. I voted against him twice, and I have a constitutional right to vote against him a third time. And don't let prosecutors deny me that right or deny you the right to vote for him. That should be up to the public. And we shouldn't have bureaucrats and elected officials and DAs determining who can run for office.
Aren't you forever surprised by how Trump is able to bring the illiberal impulses out of the illiberal?
Oh, yeah. Oh, out of the liberal, too. And
okay.
It's just horrible. As you know, probably, I've had friends on Martha's Vineyard like Larry David and like Caroline Kennedy, who won't speak to me anymore because I have defended Trump's civil liberties. These are people who claim to be liberals, but if you did anything to defend the Constitution on behalf of Donald Trump, you're no longer acceptable in that milieu. And the worst offenses against civil liberties have now come from Democrats who want to get Trump, and that's why I wrote the book, Get Trump. It's not a pro-Trump book. It doesn't say anything about elections. It's a pro-civil liberties book, and the reason I'm defending Trump is that he's become the source of denial of civil liberties for me but not for thee, and that's a very dangerous phenomenon. Today, it's directed against Trump. Tomorrow, it could be directed against you and your relatives, and you can't allow precedents to sit around like loaded weapons ready to be used by political opponents. The politicization of the criminal justice system is one of the most dangerous phenomena of the 21st century.
Are your views about the possible case against him in Fulton County, Georgia, as well as, of course, the special prosecutor investigating him on behalf of the DOJ, are your views on those matters the same?
Exactly. The Georgia case turns on one statement where he says, I have to find 11,000 votes. He said, fine. He didn't say invent. He didn't say make up. He didn't say concoct. He said, fine. There's a dictionary definition of fine. Fine means something that's been lost. It's there. What he was asking for is look around, see if there are uncounted votes, and if there are, fine them. That's not the basis for criminally prosecuting a man who's about to run for president. You know, it turns us into a banana republic when we start going after our presidential candidates or anyone else based on vague, ambiguous statements that would never serve as the basis for a criminal prosecution against somebody who is not a political opponent. So, yeah.
He is Emeritus Professor of Law at Harvard, Alan Dershowitz. His podcast, The Dersh Show, can be found on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes. The new book, as we were discussing, Get Trump, The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. Professor Dershowitz, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. On AM 560, The Answer.